Thanks everybody for joining us. My name's Adam Cohen. I'm a Spanish teacher here at the high school.
And I'm Yvonne Horseman, and I am a history teacher here at the high school.
And we just wanted to thank everyone who have joined us here live in person, and for folks who have are watching us live on Facebook Live. We're excited to offer this opportunity for some of our families to engage in different ways. This is also the first time we've presented anything in the FACE Academy over Facebook Live. So we ask for your patience and understanding with any technical glitches that may arise as this goes on. Please feel free to ask us any questions if you're out there live. They can come through and to us over here. And of course you can reach out to myself or to Yvonne directly if you have any other questions that might come up.
All right. So you're here today to talk about homework and possibly getting some help. And that's what we're here to try to help you with. We have on the agenda today, as we think about the concerns of homework, we're going to be looking at ideas and options for the right space to be studying and completing homework. We're going to be looking at suggestions on how to approach homework. We're going to be looking at the benefits of giving ourselves brain breaks. We're going to be looking also at effective study strategies, and of course we'll also direct you to any resources and links to resources through this Google slide. So, I don't know about you, but when I think about my grade school and high school days, I have a number of emotions that rise when I think about the homework that I had to deal with. And so we'd like to start by just asking you to think about a time back when you were a student. And when you think about your homework and that you did, what are some of the feelings or emotions that arise? What do you think about? And I'm going to share with you some gifts. And we'll take a look at these. And after you've just had enough time to look, we'll share on what comes to mind, which gift most appropriately reflects your own reaction to homework. So, I don't know how well we can see up here, but on the far left, we have LeBron. He's doing I'm the Giddy homework dance. Next to LeBron, we have Kenneth from 30 Rock. He's doing I'm super nervous, maybe anxiety. We have Oprah, Anderson Cooper on the far right, the stork, and then we have Marge on the bottom right. Would you take a moment to think about what your experience or your feelings
are? Me personally, I identify with Anderson Cooper, and like the Anderson Cooper eye roll there. I was like, oh, this is like, some like, not at least like at the time meaningful for me task that that I have to do, and I'm like, all right, I'll go through the motions of doing it just because I have to, but probably with like a snarky eye roll.
Do you have any particular reactions?
I would say I'd have to agree with the Anderson Cooper gift, because I just remember doing hours and hours of homework, and it really wasn't meaningful, most of it. It did seem like a lot of busy work, and it just wasn't very engaging. So I dreaded coming home and sitting for hours doing homework.
Yeah. Jen, do you have any thoughts?
I think there was a shift from, it's like when you're in elementary school, it doesn't, it seems more like LeBron, you feel like you're kind of, you're doing something meaningful, and maybe it's a little challenging, but you feel good when you do it. And then by the time I was in high school, it was like Marge Simpson.
Yeah.
Because, between activities and then trying to do the homework and wanting to be social and probably not balancing my time as much as I could have,
right.
You feel like Marge Simpson.
I think that's an interesting point that you make too, about how maybe there's phases. And I feel like I agree with what you're saying. Like, I think when I was really young, I was kind of LeBron too. I was pretty excited about just the whole sitting down at the table and doing the same things that my brothers did. But then I turned into Marge eventually.
Yeah, it wears out fast. My first grader is still like, in kindergarten and first grade, he was like, oh, that's cool, I get to do homework like my sister, but now it's like wearing off a little.
So it's worth thinking about, and certainly if those are the experiences that we have, then it's worth thinking about, like, and hopefully we have these conversations with our kids as well, like what they're dealing with when they have to sit down to homework every night. And you might be experiencing that as well with your child. But it is worth just thinking about. I don't know if we need to address this any further, but some of your better homework experiences, some of your worst homework experiences, there's a lot wrapped up in like emotionally doing homework for kids. I don't know if any of you have any comments that you would like to make to that, or Adam, if you'd like a comment you'd like to make.
Yeah, I would try to keep my, like, in terms of like the emotions of it, I would try to keep my parents out of it as much as possible. And I
Yeah.
kind of lock myself in my room, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm,
Hi, feel
are
free.
you here for that help with homework?
Please,
Okay,
come
cool.
on in.
Come on in.
How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Yeah. There's a sign-in sheet right over here.
Hi, come on in.
Hello, come on in.
Right here.
And there's also, Adam, if you just want to make sure they get a packet too.
Oh, sure.
Hey, thanks for joining us. We're also on Facebook Live, so we have people joining us on Facebook.
Alright.
So we were just beginning our conversation, and we were talking about our own experiences, even though most of us in the room are adults. We were talking about our experiences as students, like what comes to mind when we think about homework, and the emotions that are wrapped up in it. If there's anything else that anyone would like to share, we'll do that. Otherwise, we can start looking at some of the strategies. So what we were talking about, and you can see also on the front page, Adam and I decided to make the theme of this Jaws. I don't know if that relates to everyone, but when we were kids, Jaws was a terrifying movie, right? And sometimes for some people, you know, having to tackle homework and find effective ways to study can be pretty daunting and scary, just like Jaws can. But nonetheless, on the front there, you can see that's basically the agenda that we're going through, and right now we're just starting with thinking about what the right study space is, okay? And maybe it's something that we take for granted, but research indicates it probably isn't something we should take for granted. So one of the things that we want to think about first is what is the right room, what is the right space for your student, for your child to be doing homework? And it could be different for everybody. But one way to find out is by looking at and completing our study environment analysis.
And that's on the first page right here in your packet, so if you want to take a look at that.
Alright.
This is just a quick survey for you to think about, like, all right, like, where is the right spot to do homework in? Because again, all of our living spaces might look different. So this is just like a little survey for you to do really quick, or think about this like with your student in mind. And I know this is written as if like it was the student taking it, but you kind of have to put yourself in your student's shoes, so to speak, and think about like, right, like, is this really, right, there's some true and falses here to do, and right, like 3 kind of places where you might do homework, like maybe a bedroom, maybe the kitchen table, or again, all of our spaces look different, but those are probably some common places where people maybe do homework. And think about these 3 places, like maybe kitchen table or bedroom or whatever other spaces you might have, and do some true and falses here. And yeah, at the bottom you'll add up the amount of true responses, and we'll see if you really have like the best spot. So take maybe 2-3 minutes and fill out the survey. We'll
Yeah,
see
I'm gonna
what
fill
kind
out
of
too.
spots.
I got a pencil in your bag.
There's extra pens right there too, if you like. And my understanding is as
You know,
well,
trust
this
me
will
to do it.
all be linked to the Shaker Base Academy.
Which place? Okay. special. That's what I say.
So maybe while we're finishing up each of our own surveys, I could just start off and just speak for a second about my own experience as a student. And of all the places that I know that when I was a kid, I was studying and doing homework, I started out as a younger kid doing it in the dining room. And it was for reasons that we had spoken about earlier, like that's where the family hung out, and I liked to hang out with my brothers when they were doing their homework. But the older I got, the more the homework required like my focus. My mom had set up just a plain old desk, but it was just what I needed, a space in my bedroom where I was away from distractions to do things. So even just going through this, I could see that from my experience, it was gonna be in my bedroom at my desk, where my distractions were the least. When I think of my own daughter, who is in 8th grade, she tends to do her studying and her homework in her bedroom too. But the distractions are different today, as we all know. The screens can be a big distraction, even the music, which I know a lot of kids feel like they can listen to music and do work, but that's probably the biggest challenge. If she was sitting here right now with this, I think, and we look at that first, the first question. Second question, what are 2 specific things you can do to improve the amount of time you spend in the best study environment? I'd like to say that my daughter would say, for her bedroom, that it would be removing some of the distractions, especially any distraction involving a phone or an unnecessary screen. I know, does anyone else have anything like to share about that? Any kind of ahas?
I feel like my kids generally want to do their homework wherever the highest volume, like number of people are, right?
Right.
Like they don't want to be by themselves. It's like they want to be where the action is in the house, which is hard. They've sort of trained themselves to do it, but I constantly feel like this is not the right place to do your homework. Like
Right.
you really need you need to be able to focus
Yeah,
and put the phone away,
yeah.
which is a challenge.
I think too that this is worthwhile in doing it with your child, right? Like getting input from the children first and foremost, especially if we're talking middle school, high school kids. I think it's important, like you can get some more buy-in from your student, especially when you start looking at number 2, having the child think about, okay, let's be honest here, let's give an assessment. What could I do if this is the place where I best study? What can I do to make it that much more effective? What do you think, Adam? Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, and as I did this, like kind of with, right, like my feet in, like the shoes of my 5th grader, right, I had like some of the same reflections as you
Yeah.
did, like, right, like if you're gonna go into your bedroom, like probably leave your phone downstairs, or like in a different place, where that won't be a distraction.
Do you have any questions? Any questions? Suppose something to think about, you can take it with you as well and look it over again later. So just, some of this seems pretty much common sense, but it's still worth going over. Not only finding like the right room for you or for your child to study, it's also remembering what's in the room. It seems obvious, but comfort's a big one. Like you should not, and this, by the way, goes for even at school, on test-taking days, important days like that, wearing comfortable clothes so that that's not your first worry is, you wanna make sure that you're comfortable first and foremost. But in your bedroom, just making sure that there's good lighting, that we have a proper, appropriate chair. But I can even say, like right now, like my daughter has one giant bean bag, and I'm to the point now, like this is not the place where you can constantly keep doing homework. Like there's just, at some point we gotta get you into a desk, because you're gonna have a lot more reading and writing that you're gonna have to be doing.
And this Swiss ball actually is, there's a lot of brain-based research that says that, right, when you're physically engaged, like, from like the stem of your brain all the way down, and like, you can see what her posture is like and how, her brain stem is like right in line with the rest of her body, that really gets your brain like ready to do what it needs to do when it's time to concentrate, and that there's like some synergy in between like your physical self and your mental self. When we get that all lined up, you're best ready to learn and like perform. So there's some like brain-based science to like having good posture, and this is like especially for people who are fidgety and who can't sit still and like are moving around a lot. This like it keeps you engaged because you kind of have to be mindful of all that balance too, and right, that's good for keeping you on track.
So obviously there's gonna be other things that you're gonna make sure that you have in plentiful supply when you're in your room, whatever space that is, in addition to whatever works best for you, Swiss ball or chair. Anymore, I think, of course, we have our one-to-one Chromebooks, but a computer is certainly helpful, and just all the right tools. Other things that could be helpful for kids is having a timer. Some students may spend a prolonged amount of time on a particular activity, and for the sake of making sure the students get sleep at night or just move to the next activity, sometimes using a timer is really important. And a lot of people, whether it's a Fitbit or on that's where maybe the phone is a bit of a possible use, but finding some way to keep a timer, or a timer that allows you to stop and say, okay, I can take a break right now, because that's important as well. Other rewards, maybe a small snack. I did put out, for example, the peppermint discs. There seems to be some research that suggests that helps just wake you up. So it's something that you might want to consider without going maybe hog wild on it. And then I think if it's really a challenge also with you and your child, is worth considering completing a homework contract as well. And there's a copy of the homework contract in the packet. It's designed for middle school and high school students and parents. It's more or less just there for if you're interested and you think that might be something that would work. And on the other hand, you might be in a situation with your child where this is not a necessity, but it's there as an option. Any thoughts or questions at this time? Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how you go about approaching your homework. We got ourselves in a comfortable room. We got all the tools that we need. Now, how do we go about approaching homework? There's certain habits that as we create these routines, it'll make your homework time, your study time, much more effective. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to pass out a short article, actually 2 short articles. And in these articles, we're going to ask that each of you read a certain section of the article. And Adam you can help, and I can help point out too. As you're reading your assigned section, can you please just jot down a few takeaways that you have in that particular box for your notes? And this is just the next page after your homework contract, okay? So, the brain breaks is for later, but you have the worst.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once you guys hit like the first 2, which are like the calendar
And if you could read,
Yeah.
do the worst thing on your to-do list first. Have you ever heard of that before? That's like the story of my life. I take the worst thing on a daily basis and I do it first because it's got to get done, right? And could you also read that one?
Uh-huh.
Do we feel like we have all the areas covered?
Huh?
And then, if you would, and actually you did a good job of this, excuse me 1 second. And you can see here, you just jot down a few things in this area, because we're going to be sharing out and helping each other with it, okay? Thanks. Want me to type some things in here? Yeah. Alright, so let me just typer? All right, you type.
Was this session intended not to have other students here? Or, I mean, is she unique?
Well, we're all unique.
Yeah,
And yeah,
to
this
be honest with
is
you.
usually for like adults and families, but like we're happy to have you here too.
Yes, I'm gonna leave her 15 minutes earlier, my wife's gonna come pick her up.
Okay, that's great. No, honestly, I think it's a great idea.
Mhm.
It's intended for the entire family, so. And as you can even see, like some of the surveys, they're really directed specifically to the students, you know, to your child.
So you have to read. She said the worst.
Thank you. I'm so glad you did it. I was thinking about that earlier.
Can you see that?
Oh, good. You're gonna type, okay. Does anybody need more time? Pretty good? So, can we help each other out here is the idea. We've all read a particular segment without having to inundate ourselves with reading too much. But some of you read from one article about the use of calendars. What are a few, and maybe backward planning, what are a few takeaways that you have from that? And Adam's gonna type up. So if you wanna jot the rest of this down on behalf of our colleagues who are helping us, that would be great, and Adam's gonna also.
So one good idea from the article was writing down all of your assignments on a larger, like, wall calendar, so everyone in the family can see it. And then using a daily planner to break down those assignments throughout the week.
And I'm just gonna throw in anecdotal things as a teacher. I mean, I also have a middle school student, but as a teacher, I'm still impressing upon my juniors and seniors the importance, even more so. Like, there's no growing out of, like, the need to use planners. Like, even if you might think it's not cool or something, as our lives get busier, and that's just the way life is, it is really effective to have a daily planner. Whether it's what the school gives you or your own planner or otherwise.
Right, and I love my Google Calendar. Like, I use it like pretty religiously for like both personally and professionally. And I just have my like professional one up here right now because I don't want to show my personal calendar. But and this is great because like it can give me, and I do change like the view, just like the article said to do. Like sometimes I'm like long-term planning and I'm like, all right, well, when is spring break and how soon is that? How soon can we get there? But sometimes I'm just like, all right, I have to get through the week. And like what's gonna happen this week, and I need to know, like really just plan the week. But it's really helpful for like both short, mid, and long-term planning. And every student has one of these on their Chromebook, which is nice to keep track of stuff. And even like the Google like classroom integration. Like I don't have anything like set up for March yet, but if I showed you February, like right, there'd be stuff and like assignments and stuff that like, and that automatically kind of pops up in your Google Calendar too, and there's online things that are due as well.
So there's tech savvy ways to do it, and there's just good old
Good old
plain old
fashioned
paper,
ways too.
you
Yeah.
know, whatever
There's
works.
Google Classrooms used here at Shaker?
It is. Yeah, and with each passing day, ever more so. Okay.
Yeah. I'm retired, but I work in the Cleveland school system. I was just curious.
Yeah. So,
And are
but
they all assigned a Chromebook?
yes, that is correct.
That's all.
So all students have a Chromebook, but I could also say that many teachers, at least that I'm aware of, and certainly including myself, like we emphasize whatever way works best. So if you're tech savvy and you like being on your Chromebook and that's how you access your information, then that certainly, like Adam was saying, that would be the way to go. But you know, for me, like I like to write it all out, you know.
The Chromebook resides here at the school though, or do they take it home?
No, it goes home.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, middle
Good
school,
questions.
high school, and even 5th and 6th graders take them back and forth. And I think in like grades K through 4, like they live in the classroom.
So, thanks for the questions. What about any input or takeaways about daily checklists? Might be a little bit redundant to what we're saying, but if there's anything you want to add, I think the bottom line is whether you're planning, you know, weeks in advance with all the projects that come up, but even a daily. When I left my house today, there's my daily checklist, you know. So I know what it is I have to do in the busy day. Check.
I know, and that's like the most satisfying thing though too, like actually checking those things off for me
Yeah.
anyways, like.
Sometimes throwing out the checklist is
Yeah.
nice.
And there's a function in Google Calendar that I find very
Yes,
helpful with
like
that
tasks.
too. The tasks,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anything about rewards? Did anybody catch anything about the rewards beyond a few of the things that have been generally mentioned? I think it's just important to keep in mind that you are allowed to reward yourself. You just, you know, it's worth keeping it, you know, within proportion to what you're doing. It's one thing to reward yourself, and it's one thing to get up and constantly move to get distracted all the time. So that's again where the timer plays a good role, that you are giving yourself some non-distracted time, that you're really focusing on something. And it could be 20, it depends on the age of this child, but it could be 20 minutes, 15, 20, it could be 30 minutes, and then you allow yourself to get up, because choose something that actually is beneficial to you, that you would say, okay, I accomplished this, this is my reward. It doesn't have to be necessarily food. It could be take a break and maybe check out some YouTube clips or just something like that, but you're giving yourself that break. I don't know if this would really at all fit with a kid, but for me, when I need to take a break and my reward is then I just go outside for a few minutes, take a walk with the dog, catch some fresh air, come back and continue doing what it is that I need to do. And then what about do the worst first? Any conclusions, any takeaways, any tips, any suggestions?
Early is better than late.
Isn't that interesting? First 2 hours of the day are your most productive hours. Does that seem to fit with you guys? That is so me, the first 2 hours. So that does make sense. And it also just, that's one more reason why. So if you need to get something done, choose that thing that you really need to get done, which is often the thing you don't want to get done. The earlier time in the day is when you have the most willpower. And doesn't it feel good to finish it? Get it out of the way.
I like the test at the end. What's the thing that you're gonna feel most guilty about if you don't do it?
Yeah, that's a good point. If you feel
Yeah.
really guilty about it, do it first. So keep in mind, these are all ways to approach your homework. Using a calendar, daily checklists, what is it you need to get done before school tomorrow? Giving yourself a reward that's in proportion to what you're doing. Tackling the worst first. And then this is something that, you know, I've never tried. I think it would be really helpful for kids. But is this idea of keeping a worry pad. You think about the anxiety students feel and how potentially effective a worry pad is. You're thinking about what you got to get done, and there's a point in the evening where it's like, there's nothing more I can do now, but this is what I have to do tomorrow. Let me just write my worries down, bullet point or whatever works for you. Write it down, let it go. Get some rest, get some sleep. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Adam? Write her down, let her go. Right by the bedside. And it's kind of like shut the book, and that's like where you're symbolically saying, okay, I'm done worrying about it right now.
Brain breaks. We do have like a little article about brain breaks. This is one of those ways that you can kind of reward yourself with one of those, with a reward,
There you go.
as it were. So a quick little article for you guys to read really quickly. And as you're reading, I want you to think about what could a brain break look like for you in your home. So again, this is like one of those like little rewards you could give yourself for just a break when you have a lot of things to do. And yeah, like as you're reading, right? Then this question is like not going anywhere. It's up here on the board. So of course, like read and highlight, annotate as you see fit. And yeah, as you read, what does a brain break look like for you, or what could it look like for you in your home? getting there. Maybe one more minute or 30 seconds. Or are folks ready? We're pretty good.
So, as Adam has said, I want you to just think about what a brain break would look like in your home as it applies to your kids. As we move forward and take into consideration some of what we read. Keep in mind too, just some of the summations of this. It helps make brain breaks, giving yourself a break, giving your child a break, your child taking a break. Helps make homework less frustrating. And as we all said towards the beginning of this conversation, like so much of our memory is wrapped around the frustrations of homework. So if we can do anything to bring it less frustrating, then a brain break might be what we're looking for. It can include physical activities if that's what works for your child. For other kids, it might be something that needs to be more relaxing, but the point is it's supposed to really be a break, not like more work to do just in another part of the house. And then it's also important that there's some planning that goes into it. Hopefully there's a structure to your homework night, and if not, maybe that's part of what you want to think about. So you're planning out when the brain breaks will take place, and you're setting some rules down so that they're actually effective. So with that said, what do you think a brain break would look like in your home?
I watched her walk the dog.
Pet,
And hopefully that really is a break, right? Catching a little fresh air.
pet the cats.
Yeah, very good. Tactile as well.
My daughter actually, when she was a student at Nottoway, her teacher would incorporate these brain breaks during the day and this is when she was in first grade, and they would have these movement breaks, and I think it became sort of part of what my daughter has done.
That's
you know,
great.
I mean, and it was something that, she did, like I said, in first grade, so,
It's great that it was made into it. It's just inherent habit.
yeah.
My daughter also walks the dog. I don't know if she thinks of it as a break, but I like to think of it as a break for her. Anybody else?
And I know like a little note I wrote down on my paper. I need to take old man brain breaks now because like when I'm sitting for too long, like I feel myself getting stiff and I'm like, I get like antsy and like I need to stretch my back. That's like really helpful for me. And even just like if I'm in a work meeting, like I'll just sometimes stand and like stretch and like I'll still be present in the meeting, but like I'll just like my body just gets antsy and stiff and like I just need to stretch. That's helpful for me.
Good point. Anybody else? Can you, anybody wanna just fire out? I'm not asking for 3 things from everyone, but if we did this together, this is called a 3-2-1 strategy, and it's just looking at, so what are 3 things that we gathered from this Brain Breaks article? What are 2 interesting things that we pulled, that we could walk away from? And what might be one question that we still have? In no particular order, what did you find out in reading this article?
Interval breaks, or timed breaks. Versus timed breaks.
Oops, timed. Good, thank you. What else? Anyone?
The importance of breaks being scheduled and not waiting until you're too fatigued to move on.
Yeah.
You're right, that keeps it fun and it's not like, oh man, like now I have to get back at this. Like if you take that break before you reach that point of frustration, right, like it's easier to get back into it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
The reward breaks, right? Most times when you break things into discrete units, it's,
Rewards. Is there anything particularly interesting that anyone wants to pop up, or do you think that we've mentioned it in our 3 things? Anything particularly interesting? I'd have to say the importance of not waiting until the point of fatigue, that really caught my attention.
Yeah.
Like you think, I often go to fatigue, and then I'm like, all right, I need a break. So I found that to be really interesting. Anybody else?
What that associated to me with developing more self-awareness in your child. So if you tell your child, after a while, if you see, I see you're starting to get frustrated, let's take a break, then that self-awareness, like when did that start? How did I start feeling? When did I start feeling that? Do I need to take a break? You know, the, like,
Yeah.
you know.
That's a
getting
really
that in
good
the
point.
habit. Yeah.
And then hopefully developing also then that kind of self-advocacy, right?
Mhm.
I'm paying attention to what I need, what, you know, where I'm wearing out, when I'm wearing out, if I need to take a break.
Mhm.
That's important. Any
And
final
right,
thoughts?
And, right, and thank you, Bonnie, because I feel like, right, so much of like this for me is like that parent really like where my stressors are, like when I think about doing this with my own kids, is right, is that like, I don't know, preserving that like parent-child relationship, and right, homework gets in the way of that so much.
Yeah.
Of when like you kind of step into the role of being like your kid's teacher and their parent too, like that's hard.
Yeah.
And so like having some strategies to like help like put a little buffer in between, right, what is oftentimes like a contentious thing like at home, with like kids and parents doing their homework, I feel like is really important.
Cool.
Sorry, is this where we
No,
were?
you got one more thing. I mean, are there any questions that this raises? Any other questions?
What's the difference between a brain break and another kind of break?
I think, well, I mean, a reward is a reward, right? But I think the real intent of a brain break specifically is that you literally shift what you're doing, give the part of your brain that's working on, say, the whatever that homework is, a break, and let another part of your brain work, get the literally the blood flowing by movement, if you've been sitting a long time. So I think it is a pretty literal, like, give your brain a break, just for a few minutes, right? And as you had said, it could be intervals for younger kids. It seems like the research says that the older kids, it's more like kind of a portional or activity.
Yeah, I think it's way more specific and targeted. Like a break is just like, okay, I'm just gonna take a break, but this one is like, right, specifically like to kind of recuperate your brain and get back eventually, with the goal of eventually getting back at wherever you were at before.
I have read research where physical activity is effective with math homework and math scores. The article seems to suggest the same thing. I mean,
Right, with vocabulary.
that's powerful stuff when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like the importance of keeping yourself moving, and how physiologically that can help you with your thinking and with your focus. So, we've been talking about brain breaks, and we're talking about when we get back to work, what are some actual effective study strategies? I know that my students, some of them are still like trying to figure out what is it that I need to be doing so that when I do my homework and I do my studying, I'm doing it effectively. Again, when you go back to our early conversations, like I think we all these, not all, but some of us have horror stories where you think you're studying, but are you necessarily getting the most out of your time? And that's where I think a lot of kids start to feel frustrated is, what am I getting out of this? Is it useful? So we're going to talk about 4 effective study strategies, and they're very similar to each other, but they're tried and true, and they work. The first one is called Flashcards. I don't know if there's a soul around here who doesn't know what the Flashcard strategy is, but just to make it clear, and we have extra flashcards to go around in case, so you get the idea. And it's not too hokey, corny. This is what we still ask of our students in English classes, in social studies classes. Mr. Cohen, how about in your Spanish class? Do you guys use?
Yeah, we do. I've gone a little more electronic, but the research is mixed.
You're an electronic guy.
On that. For actually making the, like sometimes there's like, for some students, like actually making the flashcard itself, like this activity of writing it, like, a definition and a term, or like at least in my case, where I'm teaching another language, like, language, your primary language and the secondary language. Like the actual making of physically writing on both sides is like really helpful for some people.
Yes.
Because it adds like a tactile element.
Yes. Our kinesthetic learners, right?
Right.
So if you wish, you don't have to do this, but if you wish to take a few notes on each of these 4 strategies, well, wouldn't you know, we have 4 index, if I counted right, 4 index cards. But the flashcard strategy is really obvious, and Adam did just explain it, but maybe you're putting your term on one side, or whatever the definition. It's a bit like Jeopardy, isn't it?
Mhm.
On the other side, you could write out a question, and you just literally keep quizzing yourself through. Also having somebody else quiz you, and doing it more than once. Take a brain break, then come back to them, okay? But again, see, I'm with you, like, I'm the kind of person, and I know that's part of my teaching, or learning style, I should say, is I do find that I remember things more effectively when I'm writing them down as opposed to typing them. But that's my learning style. So that's one example, is simply the flashcard strategy. You could also, instead of using words for definitions, you could draw pictures or pictograms. That's also really effective, and if that works for your learning style, that's what you could be doing as well. So make it work for you. A second really effective study strategy is called the SQ3R, and this is in particular for reading. So this is another thing where, as a teacher, I do see that sometimes when students are given assignments, that they're either just flying through looking for answers, say to questions, but they're not taking the time to really look at it first holistically, and then breaking it down in an effective way so that you're getting the most out of what you're reading. So the SQ3R, and if you want to look at the Google Slides, at some point on your own when they're up on shaker.org, you can see the links to these. But the SQ3R really asks that when you're given something to read for homework or something to study, that you first look at the whole picture, survey it. What are the headlines? What are the titles? Is there a summary section? It's really important, not to bypass the images. If it's an article that has data or graphs or pictures, all of that is to help tell the whole story, whatever that story is, whatever that assignment is. There's a reason some things are bold-faced versus not bold-faced.
And I'm thinking about the questions I ask when I do this in a foreign language to see who people have read. I'm usually the first few questions I ask are okay, what's the main idea, which you can find, of course, in that heading or that article, or the title of the article. And then another thing I sometimes ask, depending on how this is laid out, is how is the information organized? That's really trying to get the reader to get at all of those bold-faced things and be all right, well, here's how this information is going to be presented. Here's step one, here's the second section, this is what the third section is about. And I ask those questions intentionally because I need readers, and it's hard, I know obviously it's way harder to do this in a second language than it is to do in English, but I need readers to identify all of those things first before you can get deeper into the nitty-gritty. So those are always the first couple of questions I ask is hey, what's the main idea that you can again usually find in the and how is this information organized?
So it's you're having a conversation with yourself. You really are. And that just takes us to the next part. So when you start asking questions, a lot of what you read in textbooks, students still are using a lot of textbooks as well as articles, they'll have headings, they'll have subheadings. And it really is just a matter of converting the heading into a question. So now you're having that conversation with yourself. Now this article did it for me, but if it just says brain breaks, then in my mind I'm going, okay, so what is a brain break? And then that is preparing me to concentrate on what it is I'm trying to find in the reading by turning it into questions. And then of course, without dwelling too much on this, now obviously you're reading, right? But one section at a time, continuing to ask yourself the same question when you started that particular section. And then the way you want to pull it all together reminds me of a sandwich a little bit, is at the end, again, you looked at it holistically, you broke it down into pieces, then you're going to look at it holistically again. It's like the bun, it's the nitty-gritty in between the bun, then it's the bun again. And so the bun again is then you're reviewing. What do you remember from this? You could say it out loud, you could write it down. Again, if you're reading with a study buddy, then you could be having this conversation with each other as well. But you're going back and reviewing it. Anything that you would like to add, Mr. Cohen, or we'll move beyond that?
That's a great strategy.
Okay. So those are two of the strategies that you can use either for studying and or reading.
And and if the flashcards, the old-fashioned flashcards don't work for you, right? Kia and Quizlet, and really, they're kind of they're pretty much the same material. Just click on the Quizlet, please.
Okay.
Quizlet's really wonderful. Kia pretty much does the same thing. but this is just an example of like a set of flashcards I've made for my Spanish students. Dormirse, which means to fall asleep. And if we clicked on this, like, right, like this, it flips like, you know, a regular flashcard. Right, the only drawback to this is like, right, you didn't get to make these yourself. But there's lots of like activities. This is super simple to make too. You really can just add like your list of terms on one side and your definition on the other side, and you can cut and paste them. It's nice because this can help you out with the like spelling of it too. So you have to know like what this is like, and this is like entrenarse. And you can type in the answer and it will let you know if you're correct. If you spell stuff like even just a thing off, so like lavar is, lavar. I don't know if I forgot to put the say on the end because I didn't know it was like to wash yourself, but I was like, oh yeah, I still know what's going on here. I can like override and say I was right, and this will keep track. It'll keep track of how many you have correct. So like I know, now I can pull like these two ones that I like know that I really know, I can pull those out of the stack. And I can keep studying on the ones that I really need to keep working on. So your teacher sometimes will pose these. If your teacher's not gonna make them, like we can help show you how to make these too. Feel free to shoot me an email, but it's pretty simple. You can really just like cut and paste like your terms in one column and your definitions in the other, and it will do all these wonderful things for you. There's some other activities on here that you can do too. Some like writing, I think we were just on the writing. Some other things where you can spell, and this, right, this does it like a little auditorily, so you can play on some of your different modalities if you're more of an auditory learner, and it's right, and it was like maquillarse, and you would have to type that in here. Some other activities, and it gets like, as you go a little further down, it gets a little more video gamey for those of you who need some brain breaks. So here is just, I think you're supposed to just bring these together.
Yeah.
So like, to wake up is despertarse, and you would make a match like that, and then they go away. And of course you can time yourself. And it's fun, you can play with friends. There are some other like gamey things here you can do as well. And it's nice, you can select your difficulty, and you can answer with English or Spanish, or you can make it random. And so they have some other customizable options for you here to like play some fun games to try to learn vocabulary. So what's coming here is like acostarse, which means to lie down. You would type in to lie down. To lie down. And it didn't like it because it's like to lie down / go to bed.
Oh.
And but it's okay. Like you do what you're doing.
Set me up on that one.
So, so this is just another tool you can use. It's like electronics, flashcards on steroids.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
So, right. Oh yeah, it's like, sorry, I was trying to lie down / go to
Thanks,
bed.
Mr. Cohen.
Sorry.
Of course, I don't know Spanish. So, just to reiterate, these are just four effective strategies. They're similar, but at the same time, they can work for students depending on what their strengths are, okay? So if you need to learn any more about them or want any more information about them, you can always take a look at the links that are, or how we've hyperlinked the documents to it as well to learn more about each of these strategies for studying. And it really is just about making habits with them. And the last thing that Adam and I would like to say is that the shaker.org website has a host of resources. And I think sometimes we're just so busy getting online to go to so many things that maybe we don't know what's even there. But if you go to shaker.org, or if you go to the specific school that your child is attending or your children are attending, you'll see that there are links to the tutoring centers there, homework time there. For example, Woodbury Elementary Homework Center is Monday through Thursday, 4:30 to 7, and there's a contact to get to the tutoring center manager. The middle school has both the tutoring center, but it also has Raider time, which of course we have at the high school as well. So we have a tutoring center at the high school called the Academic Resource Center. Mr. McIntyre basically runs it. We also have study circles additionally, and we have just straight out time after school where the teachers are meeting with students as students need or as the teachers recommended from 3 to 4 o'clock. So I would think it's fair to say that every school has multiple opportunities if needed for extra study time or to go over strategies for studying,
Mhm.
etc.
Right,
Um,
and really
what-
specifically here at the high school, at the Academic Resource Center, I know there's licensed teachers in every core subject here, like almost every day after school. So
And
like I know
also
I know the
students.
schedule's here, but yeah, but it's very underutilized. I'm pretty sure it's like similar, like there's folks here, like licensed teachers that help you also at middle school and at Woodbury as well. And instead of going out and hiring expensive tutors and stuff, right, like this should probably be a good first stop for many Shaker families before you go down that route.
And again, the Shaker schools, the library page has, far more in-depth resources, strategies, suggestions, in regards to study skills, so on and so forth, reading strategies. So there's, far more than even what we discussed today. If you're looking for that, you would just go to shaker.org, go to school libraries, and you will see that, on the right-hand side. And then finally, and you might come across it in some of these other links, Common Sense Media is an excellent organization and website to go to for a whole host of feedback and researched feedback on, in our case, for what works in terms of studying, in terms of homework strategies as well. And the ever-popular Khan Academy seems to have tutorials on just about everything at this point. So those are just a few of the resources that you could get to, and of course there's even probably more on shaker.org. And so it's a lot of information. Do you have any final questions or any comments or thoughts as we wrap things up?
One comment is that my youngest daughter's teacher records his, particularly with math lessons, on the smartboard and makes those accessible in Google Classroom. And I know it may not be something that's feasible for all teachers, right? And I understand that, but particularly for math, right? For kids, I feel like it's actually very helpful.
So they can keep
for
going
homework.
back to
They can go
it.
back and they can listen to it again and then use it while they're doing their homework. I mean, for her, it's been terrific.
That's excellent.
So
And of course I can't speak for the math teachers at the high school, but that's an excellent tool.
yeah.
And the repetition, and then the student has his or her own control over going back to it. This isn't.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I'm kind of a tech nerd. Are they recording like through the actual smartboard, or is it like a video recording of them like
No,
up
I
here?
think it's all I see is the smartboard.
Got
So
it.
I don't see the teacher. You just see the
Okay.
writing of the
I'll have to dig in how to like get all those smart notebook files and
Yeah.
upload them in the classroom and stuff, because they don't like to work together for me usually, but I'll find out who your
yeah.
teacher
I
is
don't
there
know
over
if I
there.
can get onto this site right now. It's not quite the same thing, but with the Google Chromebooks and with the with the Google
You're
Chromebooks,
trying to get to the read
the
right.
Read and Write, there is a tool that's called Read and Write, and I'm actually still learning about it. But in effect, it can take documents and read them aloud if that's something that helps the student. And there's a host of other tools that hopefully Adam can get to and explain with greater clarity than me. But that, especially for our more tech-savvy kids, is another tool.
By Melissa Dahl. Hands filling to-do list. Photo, Corbis. Maybe you carefully, gently ease yourself back into work.
Right. And we don't have to do this for the whole article, but it's a neat tool that everybody has on their Chromebook. Like if there's something that you can't read or you don't feel like, not that you shouldn't read it, but this is like a way for you to like follow along, like word for word with what's going on here. And again, this is called Read Write. And I think just about every Chromebook, I'm not sure if they all come with this.
No, but I think all you
Like
have to do is
enable.
go, like, get the extension.
Yeah.
But yes,
It is downloadable for everyone. And there's like tons of other, like this will do this in other languages too. If you didn't know what like organizing meant, like this will define it for you. There's a lot you can do with
there's
this.
note-taking, that you can do
Mhm.
annotating, even using a computer with a highlighter, stylus piece there. So it's somewhat new, I think, to the staff, at least I can only speak for the high school staff, but it's something that we've been introduced to and will be using it more and more, or at least offering the opportunity for kids to use it more if they need it as well, as another tool.
That we had somebody on Facebook Live ask, sorry, if you can repeat the read write thing. Is it where this is all
It's an
available in Google
It's
Docs?
an extension.
Oh, it's an
So,
extension. Okay.
Right.
So I don't know if
It's
you can see
on-
this.
I think it's
on
with
the
the-
student Chromebooks, all of them. It's on all the student Chromebooks.
Gotcha, so I think it is on all the student Chromebooks, like already, and it's right, it's a little purple puzzle piece in the upper right-hand corner
Okay.
with a R and a W for the read and the write. And they have whoever feel free to reach out,
Okay.
if they'd like more info about that.
Sorry I came late because I was in another session. I've got two questions in one and I don't know whether you've covered it or not, so apologies if you have already. You know, you were talking about study skills. Would that also include organization skills? Because to me, it seems like it's two different skills, so.
Well, so when we think about organizational skills, we did address a few things that you could find in your packet, and we can back up as needed. But particularly I think where we talked about organization is with the use of calendars, checklists, whether that calendar is a hard copy, hardbound planner, where you're writing what assignments you have, what you have coming up in a week, or just a daily checklist. That's part of the organization. What we did not talk so much about tonight is like literally how to organize binders. And that's actually a worthwhile conversation to have with students as well. I can certainly speak from experience that, you know, students all the way up to the high school are still trying to learn how to organize literally the mass of papers they get. That's not so much something we talked about, but you would certainly find in the Google Slides and in there some strategies just for organizing, like organizing your time, what it is that has to be done and when it has to be done. Does that help?
Yeah. So am I assuming that that's been done with the students already, or it's something that will be done?
Are you speaking about organizing binders? It's done in many cases on a teacher-to-teacher basis.
Okay. So
Okay.
it's not consistent.
And often, I would say at the 9th grade level, as you're heading to 9th grade, oftentimes that's where it's hit the hardest as kids are entering into high school. Again, I'm speaking from my small world. I can't speak for like Woodbury or really in the middle school. But yeah, I mean, it is hit, but that doesn't mean that some students need still some reminders. And so, but again, that's often on a teacher-by-teacher basis.
Okay. And then you spoke about the resource center that is probably underutilized. So what is the district or the high school doing about getting it out there, promoting it, or whatever needs to be done?
I know that the Resource Center has been creating like opportunities for other high school students to help as well with some of the studying so that it's more of a mentor program. I think we're just a few years into it, but there's what is called like a freshman mentor program that's being run by, or at least helped organized by a gentleman named Mr. Mudridge. And it's trying to pair up juniors and seniors with freshmen so that even for those students who either don't have the opportunity to get to the Academic Resource Center or are not comfortable with necessarily having an adult that they're studying with, this is with a student that's been vetted and recommended who's a higher level student. So kind of more of a peer tutoring, which is also an effective strategy. And then just as a side note, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but in addition to the Resource Center, which it starts at 4 o'clock, okay? So there's that 3 to 4 o'clock time. That's when students can go and see individual teachers for help. And then I could look it up and maybe add it to this list, but there's also like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's very specific study circles, which is separate from the Academic Resource Center, where kids who are in a particular subject are studying together. And that can be very effective in helping kids like buckle down and focus on what it is that they're preparing for, be it a test or otherwise. Good questions, thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much on behalf of Adam and I for attending. And we'll add some more information to the Google Slides, such as the peer tutoring, etc. So if anyone else has other questions, at least as it relates to the high school and what is offered, maybe at the middle school as well, we'll try to add those. But again, keep in mind that you can also find a lot of these resources on shaker.org as well. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.